Good evening on this critical election night in America. It is now 8 p.m. in the east, 5 p.m. in the west.
But anyone in line right now can still cast their ballot. We thank you for joining us for our election night special. I'm Dave Llewellyn here with Channel 7 editorial director Chuck Stokes. Great to have you here as we count the vote.
We are indeed counting the votes, and a lot at stake here, an awful lot, and Michigan is right in the center of it all.
It's going to be a fascinating evening, I think. And
we've seen that before, haven't we?
We have, into the early morning hours, and in the next hour and a half here, we'll be bringing you the most critical races and proposals affecting people right here in Metro Detroit. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Republican challenger Tudor Dixon, making a last-minute push to sway voters. It's one of the many races we'll be watching very closely, along with 3 proposals that will undoubtedly impact our future. So over the next 90 minutes, we're bringing you team coverage from every corner of the state. Now, we want to keep in mind that with high voter turnout and more than 2 million absentee ballots, numbers are expected to roll in slowly, likely slower than in recent elections. And that is something that people are just going to have to be patient with, frankly, with this onslaught, really, of absentee voters.
Oh, absolutely. And we haven't experienced this volume before. Right. And so it's going to be a test on the system. It's going to be a test on all the preparation that they put into place. But the good news out of this is that people seem to be so eager to cast their ballot, whether they're voting for one particular party over another. Just the fact that they're getting out and getting involved in the electoral process. And that's what we always want to see.
Glenda Lewis is part of our election team, of course. She is at Huntington Place in downtown Detroit. And we know the issues that took place in the last election with the vote count at Huntington Place. Glenda, is it a different story so far this year? Good evening to you.
And good evening to you, Dave and Chuck, and so good to be with both of you here in this space again. And it is a different story, as you say, Dave, beginning with a different time that the ballots were allowed to be counted. They started this morning counting the ballots as opposed to 2020 when we saw them unable to even crack a seal until the last votes were cast, until the polls were closed. So having this momentum going into the evening, really this has been an all-day process for election workers, you know, as well as voter opportunity. So that's been a positive going into seeing these numbers and seeing the turnout here, showing up in the way of 63,000 already counted. They expected to hit that 60 mark. They were 3 over what they expected and still have more coming in. And an interesting sight that we just saw a few minutes ago, a Penske truck rolled right into Huntington Place. There is some talk, and we're still trying to confirm whether that's that 17,000 to 18,000 more absentee ballots that they've been waiting for. We do have video of that we will show you on later editions of Ashland News and, of course, online, WXYZ.com all the time. But it's been working like a well-oiled machine, and to say that means, you know, we haven't seen a lot of issues. Even those that are countering are waiting in line patiently. Of course, Detroit police doing their job diligently, because even their presence, and there have been quite a few officers in Huntington Place, is saying alone that we are not going to have any of those antics in this democratic process, and we're here to make sure that every vote is counted. So, you know, a calm evening as we go into this final stretch and as the polls just close off. And we'll be bringing you, of course, any new developments that happen. But that Penske truck, very interesting, rolling right out that door. So we'll find out whether those are those remaining thousands of absentee ballots that we've been waiting for here at Huntington Place. Back to you guys.
Glenda, thank you. We'll check back in with you in just a little bit. Yes, lessons learned, certainly, from the last election.
I think so, and everybody was on guard.
Right.
A tremendous amount of work went into this behind the scenes. A lot of training. Extra money was appropriated by the Secretary of State's office to make sure that the clerks had all the tools that they needed to be able to run a smooth election. And that's a great report from Glenda. We just hope that this is being duplicated across the nation.
Yeah. And we have reporters, as we mentioned, all over, particularly here in Southeast Michigan, covering the candidates and the important races. Our Kim Russell is with the Whitmer campaign at Motor City Soundboard in Detroit. Kim, what's the latest? Set the scene for us there at the watch party.
Dave and Chuck, you can see the stage set up behind me here at the soundboard, where later on Governor Gretchen Whitmer, as well as other Democratic leaders, including Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and Attorney General Dana Nessel, are expected to speak to supporters. It is quiet here. However, there are some supporters starting to gather and celebrate. We see some people dancing and talking down here. But of course, it is still early. The polls just closed, and earlier I was out at we saw an event where Governor Gretchen Whitmer was talking to supporters and telling them, you know what, make sure all the voters know what their rights are. Make sure that they are able to know that if they get in line at 8 o'clock, even if they wait in line past 8 o'clock, they are entitled to being able to cast their ballot. So it is early, and many people with the campaign are still out working, trying to make sure voters know what their rights are. And we did notice that as Governor Gretchen Whitmer was speaking to supporters, she was wearing a My Body, My Decision t-shirt, sending the message that abortion is a key issue in this race. I stopped by Southfield City Hall, where many people were casting their ballots today, talked to people about what was motivating them to get out and vote. And again, I heard the governor's race and Proposal 3, the proposal that addresses abortion, are key issues.
I mean, the abortion law is the one that I care about the most, so that was the one that was the most important to me. So
what happens if mom her life is sacrificed for a fetus who is unhealthy and determined to be, detrimental to her health? What happens to the family unit then? So it's not that I agree with it, it's just that we should have a choice.
This overall atmosphere, whether like racial injustice or like women's rights and just rights in general, it seems like we're always under attack with that, and I want to let my voice be heard on it. So I think voting is important because we have the opportunity to actually let our voice be heard.
We will be out here live covering what is said by Democratic leaders as they start to see results come in. And we'll have that on 7 Action News. Reporting live in Detroit, Kim Russell, 7 Action News. Back
Kim,
to you.
thank you. We'll get back with you as the evening progresses for sure. Meantime, our Brett Cast is in Grand Rapids at the Dixon campaign headquarters on this election night. Brett, set the scene for us there in Grand Rapids.
Hey, well, Dave and Chuck, good to be with you too again. Yeah, it's definitely gotten a little more exciting here inside the Tudor Dixon camp. We're at the JW Marriott in downtown Grand Rapids. If you can hear the TVs on behind me, they got both Fox News and ABC on, and the crowd erupted in cheers as they announced that Governor DeSantis would be reelected in Florida, and also Marco Rubio was being reelected to the Senate as well. So you can definitely feel the energy, but they're paying attention to those races, but obviously most excited for the race here in Michigan between Tudor Dixon and Governor Whitmer. You can see some of the folks here behind us. It's been filling in, trickling in over the last hour or so. And I've been kind of following, the Tudor Dixon campaign a little bit over the last couple weeks, going to some of their rallies throughout Metro Detroit. And what I've been hearing from their voters is they really felt like they were getting the momentum in this race. They really felt like they were seeing more ads for Tudor Dixon, more excitement for Tudor Dixon. So people I've been talking to are saying that, look, this race may be a lot closer than people anticipate. Again, these are Tudor Dixon supporters who are really feeling the excitement there, but they definitely think that this race could be close. Again, as we heard from Glenda earlier, they're counting those votes out in Detroit. So we really don't know when these results can be in or will be in here tonight. So I know the folks here are planning to wait this one out. They're anticipating a late night, as well as we are anticipating a late night here in Grand Rapids. We know that Tudor Dixon is here somewhere. We have not seen her yet, but we did hear from her campaign that she probably won't be out until they have a clearer idea of who might win this election. As you said earlier, the polls closed at 8, so hopefully we can get a better idea as to where the vote stands as they begin to count those votes coming in. But definitely a lot of excitement here watching some of the other races around the country. People here really hoping for that red wave around the country, but we'll see what happens, especially what happens here in Michigan. But for now, we're live in Grand Rapids at the Tudor Dixon campaign. I'm Brett Cass with 7 Action News.
Brett, thank you very much. We'll look forward to getting back to you with more as the evening progresses as well. We've got our first special guest with us this evening, Dave Dulio, the political science professor at Oakland University, also runs the Center for Civic Engagement. We want to talk a little bit about that, but first, Chuck, I think we should get a comment on your take on where this governor's race is in your view.
Sure, it's close, right? I mean, we've seen that for the last month or so. The race has tightened from a significant Whitmer lead to one that's within striking distance for Tudor Dixon, and I would say that she's got a puncher's chance tonight. I think it depends on a couple of things. Turnout for sure, and this is one of those elections, I think, that whoever does the best at getting their people to the polls, whether it's through absentee ballots or election day turnout, is probably going to come out on top. I would also add, too, that the debates that we had, including one with Channel 7, I think really had a big impact on a lot of folks and their decision on who to vote for.
Yeah, well, first of all, let's say thank you, because you put a lot of hard work and partnership with us, both in the primary and also in the general of hosting those debates at Oakland University. So hopefully we didn't wear you all
Not at
too
all.
much.
Come back anytime.
Yeah. Brett talked about the fact of abortion being a major issue, but we've also heard the economy being a major issue. Which one do you think is going to really drive the turnout that you just talked about, or will they possibly cancel each other out?
I think it's both, right? I think the driving force behind a lot of people's votes is really individual to them. There are people out there in Michigan who are going to show up at the polls and cast a ballot solely because of the issue of abortion, but there are other folks that are going to drive down the road on the way to work or way to pick up their kids from school and cast a ballot just because they see a high gas price, right? And those are going to be things that are really individual level drivers, I think. The polling that we've seen over the last month seems to indicate for more of those folks out there, the economy has started to take over as a bigger driving force in their vote choice. But until all the votes are counted and we really can get a sense on what happened here today, who knows, right?
Right, and should Tudor Dixon be able to pull off the upset, I mean, it would be a huge upset from the standpoint of where she started against an incumbent governor who had a war chest that, was multiple times larger than Tudor Dixon as well.
Absolutely, Dave. I think it would be the biggest political upset in Michigan's history. I think we could find
bigger than Blanchard and Engler.
I think so, simply because of that deficit that she faced, as well as Engler was Senate Majority Leader.
That's true. He had a name and power,
and she came from nowhere really. So I think that would be biggest upset ever.
As director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, a nonpartisan organization, has this campaign, whether it's the top of the ticket or the down ballot races, has it reached the level of civic engagement that you're pleased with?
We will wait and see what our voter turnout numbers look like. Okay. We participate in a study that thousands of campuses do across the country, and we get voter turnout data specifically for our campus. And OU really usually has a strong showing. We usually outpace voter turnout just among our students of both Michigan and the country. So we'll see. I think 2022 might be a little off on that, but based on the way other campuses seem to be voting today, Ann Arbor and East Lansing to be specific, there seems to be pretty good interest among college kids. We'll see.
And the quick follow-up, the reason I asked that question is we've seen some recent studies that suggest that the American people are exhausted from the partisanship that we see going on a psychological level.
I think there's something to that, and who can blame them? Right, all of the television commercials. No offense, Channel 7, right? But all of the commercials that are on air during the newscast and other programs, people are saturated with negativity, which is a whole other kettle of fish, right? That we could talk about. But people they've had it up to here, and I think they're looking for a break. But at the same time, we're seeing really strong turnout in Michigan, and which I think is a great thing. And even maybe in spite of all that saturation that's out there.
Yeah. Stick around with us. I know you've got a little bit more time. We'll come back and touch on some other subjects as well on this night that I think is going to be beyond interesting, right?
No doubt about it.
To say the least.
Thank
right?
you. Dave Doolio, Professor of Political Science, Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University, kind enough to join us again as we delve into this midterm election 2022. Chuck, thoughts in general that maybe you have at this point?
Well, you know, normally in a midterm election, the party that is in the White House takes a beating at the political polls. We don't know that that's going to happen this time because of the issues that Dave Doolio, Professor Doolio, articulated. So this is sort of a pretrial to what may happen in 2024, and this sets the stage for all the jockeying that we're going to see in the upcoming presidential election. Who will the candidates be? Who will emerge? We know some of the people who have name recognition already, but oftentimes there's a surprise out there. There's someone that comes out of the dark. And will President Biden seek re-election? Those are big questions. A lot of people are assuming, oh, he's not because of age, but you can't make that assumption. The power that rests in that White House can become almost intoxicating at times, for lack of better words. And when you have that, you don't want to let go of it. So he may very well look at the Democratic Party and say, I'm going 4 more years, if he's popular at that time.
Right. Well, and that's been a bit of an issue in the run-up here to the midterm election. The favorability ratings not particularly high right now, and certainly there are reasons for that as well, given the economy and the war in Ukraine.
And we could see a rematch of 2020 with President Trump saying that he's going to announce for re-election. This could be deja vu.
Well, we may know more.
We'll buckle up.
We may know more about that in a week's time. We've got some important proposals on the ballot that Michigan voters have been weighing in on today, either at the polls or through their early absentee voting. Mike Duffy, our reporter and anchor, has that coverage. He's in downtown Detroit with more on Proposal 3 on reproductive freedoms for women.
I'm here at Vote Yes on Prop 3 Election Night Watch Party headquarters, and joining me right now is Shanae Watson-Whitaker. She is the Deputy Campaign Manager with Reproductive Freedom for All. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So it's been a long road to get to this point. What have you had to deal with to make tonight happen?
Well, we started off with the petition process, and now that we were on the ballot, and now people are just going out to vote, and it's a very exciting time here in Michigan, and we're here to make history.
So obviously this has engaged a lot of different people. You were telling me that a lot of youth have participated in all this.
Yes, there were long lines at Michigan State University as well as U of M of students standing online, registering to vote and voting on the same day. That is remarkable, and this shows you how important this proposal is to young people in Michigan.
And it's not just here in Michigan. This has gained national attention. What do you think that says?
That says that people understand what's at stake, that here in Proposal 3 we have a common sense solution, and we're restoring Rowe here in Michigan, and we feel like we can help other states do the same thing and follow the template that we have here in Michigan, that this is a people-powered effort to protect our reproductive rights, and other states, again, can follow our lead as well.
And I would be remiss not to acknowledge that there has been some controversy around Prop 3. What do you say to those who have said that this proposal is too extreme?
Restoring Rowe isn't extreme at all. It's something we've had in place since 1973 for 50 years. What's extreme is going back to the 1931 abortion law. So we don't want to go back there. Again, we're about restoring Rowe here in Michigan. This Proposal 3 is a common sense solution. It restores the rights we've had for over 50 years, and that's what we're doing here today.
Okay, Shanae Watson-Whitaker with Reproductive Freedom for All, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Well, we're here at Prop 3, Vote Yes on Prop 3, and we'll be here all night. We'll bring you the latest updates as the election results continue to come in. In Detroit, Mike Duffy, 7 Action News.
Thank you so much, Mike. Joining me now to expound upon some of these very controversial statewide proposals that we have is Erin Elizabeth Marino. She is with the Thomas More Law Center, and also Livonia Perryman. She is with the Metro Detroit National Congress of Black Women. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We keep hearing that this is the issue that will get people up off their couches or supposedly got people up off their couches to go vote. Do you agree with that assessment? And if so, why? I'll start with you, Ms. Marino.
Sure. So I don't agree with that assessment because there's been 2 injunctions granted by the courts, one by Judge Gleischer and the other by Judge Cunningham in Macomb County, a permanent injunction granted on the 7th of September, finding that there was already a right to abortion within the Michigan Constitution. Those cases, Planned Parenthood versus Michigan Attorney General and Whitmer versus Linderman, they're going to find their way to the Michigan Supreme Court, which we know has a majority of pro-choice justices on the court.
So this will not just be settled by the voters?
No, if Proposal 3 passes, then it would. But people are saying, oh, we need to have this in our Michigan Constitution. Well, 2 courts have already said that the right to abortion is in the Michigan Constitution. And I think that looking at the makeup of the court, there's no chance that the justices wouldn't vote that, yes, it's already in the Michigan Constitution. So I think that that's something that's not actually been discussed very frequently. And people think that it's this vote between the 1931 law that's, again, been enjoined by 2 courts or Proposal 3, and I think that that's a false choice, that it's not actually that choice.
Livonia Perriman, do you see it that way, and what's your concern?
Well, I don't think I see it that way, nor do the people that have voted, or, well, this is after 8 o'clock, have voted, saw it that way. They saw that they were voting for the right to have a choice, and that was what was the message. That was the plan, and that was really what was written in the proposal. And then when I look at the situation, University of Michigan did a study of African American women, 3 times more mortality rate among African American women. And they looked at the women and they asked African American women, would you support Proposal 3? And they said yes, because they want the government to be a layer of protection. They want 1931 to be erased. They did not want to get up one morning and not have or feel that they had the protection to decide if they want to have a family, expand the family, and if they had a family and they had a child, that they would have some sort of support in terms of health care. So the people as of today, right now, if that is the case, that was not discussed, that was not reported, nor was it in the Proposal 3. Proposal 3 says we want 1931 wiped out.
Yeah, Ms. Marino, the viewers were bombarded with political commercials on both sides of the political aisle here. And many people felt as though there were untruths or great stretch in terms of the facts on both sides. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I think on one side saying that, yes, this would get rid of parental consent, it would get rid of informed consent, the health and safety regulations. That's based on, after Roe versus Wade was decided, we went through a period of time where all of these regulations were struck down under the standard that the Supreme Court decided these issues should be decided under in Roe. And then in 1992, it changed the standard to a lesser standard. And the Supreme Court remarked that, the standard that was in place under Roe, it struck down a lot of common sense health and safety regulations. So for the last 30 years, we've been operating under a law that now we're going to go backwards. We're going to go backwards to this legal construct where it's very, very difficult for the state to enact common sense regulations such as parental consent.
Okay, Livonia Perriman, I'm going to give you a real quick, we're going to have to go to a cut-in.
Now, from 7 Action News, this is an election update.
Good evening to you. 7 Action News cutting in with an election update just for you.
The polls closed just about 20 minutes ago. And now we're waiting for the results to start trickling in. One of the biggest races we're all watching, of course, the race for governor.
Yes, indeed. We do have reporters standing by with both camps tonight. You can see right there on your screen some of the numbers. Let's start with 7 Action News reporter Kim Russell live in Detroit with the Whitmer campaign. Kim, fill us in.
Yes, I'm live at the soundboard at Motor City Casino, and this is where, as you can see, the stage is set where Governor Gretchen Whitmer is expected to speak to supporters later on tonight, along with other Democratic leaders such as Attorney General Dana Nessel and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Right now, supporters are starting to gather, but it's still relatively quiet as the polls closed not long ago. For many, this is an emotional race with issues that really hit close to home. I was out talking to voters earlier today, and time again, they told me the two big issues for them were the governor's race and Proposal 3, which addresses abortion. We saw Governor Gretchen Whitmer as she was out talking to supporters earlier today wearing a t-shirt that said, "My body, my decision," definitely sending a message about where she stands on that as she works to encourage people to get out the vote. Now the question is, with those being issues that really drove people to the polls, what will the results be? And we will be covering it live as supporters and the governor start to learn just that. Reporting live in Detroit, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
Thank you so much, Kim. Polls closed about 26 minutes ago. We'll check back with you in just a little bit.
And let's turn now to 7 Action News reporter Brett Cass live with the Dixon camp in Grand Rapids. What's the mood like there, Brett?
Well, Dave, there's been a lot of energy here in the last few hours. They have both Fox News and ABC News on here on the TVs, and there's a lot of cheers as they saw other Republicans in other states where their polls closed at 7. As they saw that those races were called, they were getting excited. But of course, Michigan's races the polls closed at 8. So it might be a bit till we see those results trickle in, but definitely a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement here. And I can tell you, speaking to Tudor Dixon supporters on the campaign trail throughout the last few weeks or so, they really think that voters are focused on issues like the economy and on parental rights in schools. And they really think that's going to drive people to the polls. They felt a lot of excitement from the Tudor Dixon base here, and they think they're going to come out today on Election Day and really have a much closer race than some people anticipate. Again, it's really unclear when we might expect results. We know Tudor Dixon is here somewhere, but I've been told by her campaign she may not take the stage until we have a clearer idea of what those results might be. So whether that's in a few hours, whether that's in 6-7 hours, we don't know, but we'll be here out in Grand Rapids. Dave?
Certainly been competitive. Thank you, Brett. Let's bring in Glenda Lewis right now. She's live tonight in Huntington Place.
Major operation, vote counting happening right now. Glenda?
Yes, Dave, Carolyn, votes been counting, and votes have been counting since 7 o'clock this morning, which is really a change from 2020 when they weren't allowed to even start opening up those absentee ballots until after the polls closed. So there's been a jump, in a sense, on this election. There's been an ease that's been efforted by not only Detroit police, but by the way this operation is being handled here at Huntington Place. We're on a different floor than what we saw in 2020, the ground floor and the windows. That's not a possibility here. Security is tight, metal detectors, several officers in place. And right now, we're actually seeing a gathering of media around the election announcer. It's not something we can show you now, but of course our Ross Jones is there covering that angle. But it's been working quite well. It's been moving smoothly for the most part, and even those that have a concern or a contest are peacefully waiting in line. Carolyn, Dave.
Certainly a different atmosphere from what I experienced 2 years ago. We have much more to come for you.
8:56, our next cut-in. We'll see you then.
This has been an election update from 7 Action News. Stay with 7 Action News and WXYZ.com for all your election coverage.
We continue our look at and analysis of Election Night 2022. It's happening right now on all of your favorite streaming platforms, and we appreciate you joining us. we're starting to see, Chuck, a trickle of votes coming in, and this is going to continue. We hope speedily throughout the night, but that's to be determined.
Hopefully it's going to be a very smooth process. We have tremendous amount of technology now, which you can count those votes pretty fast, and we know we got a lot of new machines and new technology at works here. So we're going to test the system and hope that it all works out well.
And speaking of those numbers, our Brian Abel is in the election center, our big wall, if you will, tracking the results as they come in tonight. Brian, what are we seeing early on here?
Yeah, I'm hoping all this technology works out pretty well as well, Dave. We are getting the first numbers into our system here, so that's some exciting news. As we take this full screen, I want you to take a look at what we're seeing so far. You're going to see that there are some votes out there, 101,000 for Governor Whitmer right now, about 52,000, a little bit more for Tudor Dixon at the moment. And you can see the map. It's going to start filling in throughout the evening as all these counties start reporting. But there's that little discrepancy over here on the side when you see 0% reporting, despite the fact that there are votes coming in. Well, here's why. Because these are most likely, given the individual precincts, these are most likely the ones that are reporting so far, the in-person votes. But precincts will not consider themselves having been reported until they have turned over both the in-person as well as the absentee ballots. So that is why you're going to see that discrepancy right now. And that's going to happen early on. That will end up changing as the night goes on. But so here's what statewide the governor race looks like right now. Let's go through some of the other races right now. The AG race. Dana Nessel up at the moment against Matthew DePerno. And then we can also look at some of the House races. And I'm not going to click on every individual one right now, but you can kind of see right now that early red wave. But also we do need to caution our viewers here that this red wave may be a red mirage. You might have heard that in the last couple of weeks leading up to it, because one thing that we have learned from previous elections is that those absentee ballot numbers will be coming in late. So this is early, very early, like 0 to 1% reporting for precincts so far. So still a long road to go this evening, but we are starting to get some of the early info in. Dave?
Brian, thank you. It'll be interesting to watch those numbers grow throughout the evening for both candidates and all of the different races and the proposals as well.
Yeah, and you can bet that there are a lot of relieved people when they start seeing those numbers finally come in and there's not a hiccup in the system as of yet, and we hope that there won't be a hiccup in the system as well.
We have our reporters all across Southeast Michigan and across the state, in fact, with Brett Cast in Grand Rapids at the Dixon campaign. Sarah Grimmer is at the Democratic Watch Party in the Detroit area with a look at what's happening there right now. Sarah?
All eyes here tonight won't just be on Governor Whitmer, but also Attorney General Dana Nessel and Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Both of them are expected to make an appearance here tonight. Benson's campaign focuses on election security and shorter wait times that she says she's implemented at Secretary of State branches. Incumbent Nessel's campaign focuses on abortion rights and consumer protection. She's being challenged by Republican Matt DePerno. Recent polls show their race is tightening, and a lot of attention will be on U.S. House races here, especially Alyssa Slotkin versus Tom Barrett. That race is considered a toss-up, and it is the most expensive House race in the country. Finally, we're also keeping a close eye on the Michigan Senate and House races tonight. Republicans have had control of both since 2010, but experts have ranked both races tonight as toss-ups, saying Democrats have a chance to take control. And coming up in the next half hour, we're speaking one-on-one with Senator Debbie Stabenow about what's at stake tonight for the Democratic Party. Reporting in Detroit from the Democratic Watch Party, Sarah Grimmer, 7 Action News.
Sarah, thank you very much. We got some congressional races, certainly of note tonight. Very, very important to so many across the state of Michigan.
And 4 in particular in this state are being watched by the rest of the nation, from the west side over in the 3rd District all the way over to Southeast Michigan with the 10th District, in which you might be making history there if John James becomes the first African-American Republican congressman from Michigan. So a lot's going on.
And with redistricting, that's an open seat.
It changed the game. It changed the entire landscape, made some of these races that traditionally have been safe Democratic seats or safe Republican seats now much more competitive.
And our Darren Cunningham is covering that race. He is in Macomb County with where things stand and the mood, I guess, where you are right now. Darren, good evening to you.
Yeah, good evening, Dave. Chuck, nervously and cautiously optimistic. That's how Carl Marlinga tells me he is feeling right now. It is Democrat Carl Marlinga versus, as you mentioned, Republican John James for the 10th Congressional District. Also, as you mentioned, it's a newly drawn 10th Congressional District serving parts of Macomb and Oakland counties. I'll step out of the way so you can see some of the supporters here at Marlinga's election night watch party. We are in Mount Clemens at O'Halloran's. And number of supporters here. They're waiting for those results to come in. And the former prosecutor and former judge is also here amongst his supporters. We also stopped by John James' watch party earlier. We'll be heading back over there. But he's a businessman and veteran who previously ran twice for a U.S. Senate seat, ended up coming up short. So both gentlemen now here, they are hoping that the results will end up swinging in their favor. So for now, we're reporting live in Mount Clemens. Darren Cunningham, 7 Action News.
Darren, thank you for the update there. Definitely an interesting and important race to watch.
It is an important race, and the third time might be the charm for John James. But he's going up against Carl Marlinga, who is a well-entrenched name in Macomb County, having been the former prosecutor out there. And he's been out there forever and involved in politics for a long period of time as an elected official. So we're going to have to see. You never know what's going to happen in Macomb County. We oftentimes affectionately call it the bread and butter county of southeast Michigan. They vote with their pocketbooks. And whether or not this is going to be the congressional race in which the financial issues take precedent over some of the other social issues, we'll have to determine.
Abortion, reproductive rights topping the list of important issues for Michigan voters in terms of the proposals on the ballot this year. The hotly contested Proposal 3 would create an amendment to the state constitution protecting abortion rights. We had a little back and forth between two of our guests on that subject. And right now, 7 Action News reporter Mike Duffy catching up with an opponent on why she says this proposition goes too far. Mike?
Now, I've been speaking with many people who are passionate about protecting the right to an abortion here in Michigan, many of whom are here tonight waiting to see what happens with the election results. But I've also been speaking with another woman who's passionate about the opposite, encouraging Michiganders to vote no on this proposal. How are you feeling today?
We are feeling optimistic that our message is resonating with voters across the state. The more they hear about how extreme Proposal 3 is, the more they reject it.
And tell me, what are your biggest concerns with Proposal 3?
Pro-life or pro-choice, Proposal 3 is a dangerous constitutional amendment that would repeal parental consent laws for children seeking abortions and gender hormone therapies. It would allow late-term abortions and even repeal the health and safety regulations that abortion clinics have to follow to keep women safe.
While the amendment is likely to end up in courts, most legal experts say current Michigan laws regarding parental consent would remain. I asked Polo what canvassing for a no vote on Prop 3 has been like. What has that process been like for you?
We have been busy making direct contact with as many voters as possible through phone calls and door knocking, using every means possible to ensure that every voter has read the full amendment text and is aware of the implications of Proposal 3.
And as you heard there, Polo is optimistic that when all the results come in from this election, the vote will be no, but people here at this watch event definitely hope for the opposite. In Detroit, Mike Duffy, 7 Action News.
Mike, thank you very much. That's Proposal 3. There are also 2 other proposals on the ballot. And Proposal 2, Chuck, has to do with, again, amending the Michigan Constitution as it relates to ballot boxes, early voting, some other changes that will impact elections going forward if approved by voters.
Correct, and we're one of a number of states across the United States in which voting rights is in the hands of the voters to make that determination in terms of what kind of stipulations and rules they want to see instituted and embedded into the Michigan Constitution, and that's what really important here is that people have to understand this will be law, and this will be an amendment to the Michigan Constitution if it passes. Of course, there's controversy abound. We saw the political ads, some for, some against. They were going back and forth. Each side was saying that the other side was stretching the truth or outright lying or not giving all of the facts or not being accurate with it. It's now in the hands of the voters.
And we have more on this. Our Kim Russell with more on Proposal 2.
This is a look at Proposal 2. It lists 9 voting rights that would become part of Michigan's Constitution if passed. One big change would impact members of our military.
For the military, right now, they have to have the ballot in by Election Day. This would allow them to send it by Election Day.
Correct.
West Bloomfield Township Clerk Debbie Binder sat down with us to give us a look at how the proposal would change how she and other clerks around the state operate. She says in some cases it puts current laws in the state constitution. For example, it would make Michigan's law on how you identify yourself to vote part of the Constitution.
They either have to have one of the acceptable forms of photo ID, or they have to sign an affidavit saying they are not in possession of their photo ID.
And having a photo ID is a gold standard.
Former Secretary of State Ruth Johnson, who now is a state senator, says she believes the affidavit is not enough. Voter Dan Poole says this is why he would vote against Proposal 2.
I want to see voter ID.
One of the big changes in Proposal 2 is you would have in-person voting for 9 days before the election. Right now, you can vote absentee in person before the election, but it's not exactly the same.
You can see here at the West Bloomfield Township Clerk's office, this is where they have the absentee ballots after they are checked against the qualified voter file and verified. They are kept here until Election Day when they are tabulated. If you had early voting, as Proposal 2 would allow, voters would be able to feed their ballots through a tabulator at a voting center.
We're not going to get results ahead of time, but if you spoiled your ballot, you're going to know it because it's going to spit it back out at you and you'll have the opportunity to correct it.
Voters who support this say it will make voting more accessible.
People who work and have lives need to have the ability to vote outside of the one day that the state has mandated.
It should be a lot easier to vote.
Critics of that change say it will take more resources.
And you would have to hire many more people than right now are available.
State Senator Johnson says while many parts of the proposal are already law, that doesn't mean voting on them doesn't matter. If passed, the proposal limits the legislature.
When something goes into our Constitution, we may not block it.
Some supporters of the bill say that's the point.
There are so many opportunities now, decisions made by the legislature to put serious limits around who has access.
And that was Kim Russell reporting on Proposal 2. Simon Shakett is in Novi. He is a GOP watch party. We've got, in addition to the governor, of course, and Tudor Dixon is in Grand Rapids. We've got the Attorney General's race, and we've got the Secretary of State races as well.
Absolutely, and the Attorney General race, if we're to believe all the polling that we saw leading up to this, it was neck and neck and within the margin of error, and so it could go either way. Secretary of State's race had a little bit more of a margin, but you can't take anything for granted. So we're going to see how posters hold up tonight.
And Simon Shakett is in Novi. He has more on, I guess, the mood there, the scene. What are you seeing? What are you hearing, Simon?
Dave, Chuck, this room has really filled up here at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi. This is, of course, the GOP watch party for Metro Detroit. You can see people gathering here. The tables are filling up. Now, a big focus, the Attorney General race. As you mentioned, polls show it might be the tightest race in the state. Matt DePerno is here. He has centered his campaign around election security, crime, and ending COVID mandates. Now, Secretary of State candidate Christina Caramo is expected to be here as well. Also, she has a platform focused on investigating claims of fraud, election security, and opening more branches. Now, this could be a long night. Folks here are planning to spend several more hours here. And hi, Michonne. Michonne Maddock here with the GOP. Talk to us about what you have seen so far in terms of turnout and what you're gathering from talking to supporters here.
I mean, turnout's been incredible. I spent all morning driving around in my husband's International Harvester precinct to precinct. They were running out of ballots in Ada Township over in Kent County, in our area in Oakland County. Huge enthusiasm, lines. I've never before stood in line to vote. So this is my first time ever. So I have to admit, I got emotional today.
I cried a couple of times today. It's going to be huge.
And I can see over your shoulder the challenger, Matt DePerno, is here in the room. He's talking with supporters.
I was just with Matt. President Trump called. He was a little bit anxious about Wayne County. We calmed him down. We told him everything's great, everything's good. You know, he's got his eye on the entire country today, but I feel great. Matt DePerno is going to win this. There's nothing that's going to feel better for me than Matt DePerno walking into that office.
Let me ask you about Christina Caramo. Is she here as well, and have you had a chance to talk to her?
We've talked with Christina's campaign manager. I expect Christina here tonight, but she is a hard worker. She is holed up in a house with about 10 of her most loyal companions, and they're burning up the phones, making sure that every last voter gets to the polls, and then she'll probably rouse herself and head over here in a bit.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Shawn. We'll talk with you later in the night.
Okay,
thank you.
anytime.
And as she mentioned, this room really has filled up. 350 tickets sold for this event, for this watch party for the GOP for Metro Detroit. We'll be updating you throughout the night. Dave, we'll send it back to you.
All right, Simon, thank you very much. I don't know that anybody, as polls have tightened, particularly in the governor's race and apparently in the AG race, I certainly haven't heard anybody predicting that Republicans could possibly sweep all three of those elected offices. I mean, is that out of the realm of possibility?
Well, I guess it's not out of the realm of possibilities. It wasn't what we would call probable going into this. But if Tudor Dixon ends up getting a humongous amount of votes from the west side of the state in particular, and then dipping into some key areas of southeast Michigan, anything is possible. What I heard that was very interesting is the long lines that she said she had never seen before. That may bode well for the GOP because its conventional wisdom is that they will come out and vote in person because they don't trust the system as much to be able to vote early on. So that's a key thing. And then the fact that President Trump called in and is concerned about what's happening in Wayne County. So,
all right, speaking of Wayne...
He's watching from Florida.
I think he is. Speaking of Wayne County, Ross Jones is live for us and in Detroit, in Wayne County, at Huntington Place, as the Detroit vote continues to be counted. Ross, what's the latest from there?
Dave, Chuck, good evening. I think we all had flashbacks of 2 years ago in this building when it was. We saw the pounding on the glass. Folks should be stopped. We feared, many of the reporters who were covering this again 2 years later, that we would be greeted with more chaos. And instead, we have been greeted with calm. We've been here for about 9 hours now, and I am happy to report nothing remarkable has happened. They have counted about 56,000 absentee ballots. That is a number that's a little bit lower than we had been told earlier in the night when we were told by Elections Director Daniel Baxter that they had counted 63,000, which is a number we'd been reported. He had a gaggle with reporters about 15, 20 minutes ago, and that number now stood at about 56,000. They are still expecting 20,000 more absentee ballots to be delivered today, which will be counted here, bring the total up to somewhere around 75 to 80,000 absentee ballots, which is approximately what they had been estimating in the days leading up to the election. At the precinct level, the polls obviously closed some 48 minutes ago. Poll workers there will drive memory cards from polling equipment to the Wayne County Department of Elections in the News Center, where that data will be uploaded, and then they expect that we're going to start seeing big chunks of actual numbers somewhere in the 9 o'clock hour, 9:30. Of course, Chuck, Dave, you have been covering many elections. You know that Detroit always takes longer, and there's good reasons for that. Of course, it's the largest city. It has the most precincts. So we'll see some data. I refreshed on my phone here just a few minutes ago and didn't see anything yet reported from Detroit, but that's to be expected. You know, 2 years ago, a lot of folks came to some devious conclusions because the vote totals in Detroit showed up after midnight, showed up after 2 a.m. We all knew that was going to happen, and that will likely still happen again because that's just how it operates when you're counting ballots in a city the size of Detroit. So we're going to be here for a while. Everybody knows we're going to be here for a while, but we are hoping, and Daniel Baxter, the Director of Elections, said he hopes to have everything counted no later than 4 a.m. If they still have ballots to count at 4 a.m., they will still do that, but we should have at least a pretty good idea of where Detroit is at by then. But it has been a dramatically different scene than it was 2 years ago, in part because we're in a different room. There is a room we're in now that has no window, so no one who's not permitted to be here can come and view the process and come up with some improper conclusions as to what's going on behind the glass as we saw 2 years ago, but also an enormous police presence. I've seen commanders here, I've seen deputy chiefs here. There's a lot of private security here, both outside the building and inside. They want people to know that if you come in here, you are going to be greeted by a lot of police. And that's why I think part of the reason why there have been so few incidents, if any incidents. We talked to Daniel Baxter, he said, nothing to report. And in this case, no news is good news. Dave and Chuck, will send it back to you.
It is good news, Ross. Thank you for the update there. We'll all be hanging out to get voting totals as the night goes on.
And one noticeable difference, I remember the days when Ross Jones was down there and there were chalkboards behind him and people were writing on chalkboard. Technology has taken that over.
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
That's a good thing, a very good thing.
Yeah.
Save some chalk.
We want to welcome now to our election coverage Jamie Rowe, who's a GOP consultant, longtime former chief of staff to Candace Miller when Candace was in Congress representing Macomb County. Jamie, welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining Chuck and myself tonight.
Hi, Jamie.
Thank you. Yeah, hi, both of you. Thank you for having me tonight. Big night for our state and for our country.
Jamie, what's your gut feeling? You've been in the trenches there, in the grassroots area. You're from Macomb County. You know it like the back of your hand. What's your gut feeling on what you're seeing and hearing and what you think may take place when all the votes are counted?
Well, I'm really optimistic about where we stand. I think we saw this morning the Trafalgar poll come out, which showed Tudor Dixon up slightly in the state in their final poll. They're one of the most accurate pollsters in America. So I am hopeful that Tudor and Shane Hernandez are going to be able to pull this thing off tonight. I think we've got a great shot in the Attorney General's race. And I'm actually here in Lansing right now because I'm my client, the State House Caucus, and up here trying to help them reel back in our majority tonight, and we think we have a very good chance of doing that. One thing I'm really excited about in my home county, in Macomb County, is the fact that I think by the end of the night we're going to have Congressman-elect John James, and I think he's going to be a great new leader for our party in the state.
Jamie, how about Macomb County as it relates to determining the next governor for the state of Michigan? I think Gretchen Whitmer said not long ago that Oakland County could well decide the governor's race, but we know Macomb County will have a say as well.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Macomb County doesn't take a backseat to any other in the state. And one big difference, I think, between Oakland County and Macomb County is it's sort of flipped from what it used to be. And Oakland County used to be a Republican stronghold, and Macomb County was a Democrat stronghold, and now that's sort of flipped. And Macomb County has become even more Republican, particularly here during the post-Trump era. And I think that as the Republican Party has become much more of the party of the working class, hardworking blue-collar workers all over Macomb County have been supporting our candidates up and down the ticket. And we think that we have a number of legislative seats that we're going to pick up in Macomb County today. And I think Tudor Dixon's going to come out of Macomb County with a pretty solid margin.
All right, it's going to be interesting. Real quick question. 57-53 Republican majority in the House, 22-16 in the Senate. You think that lead's going to be stretched out when all is said and done?
It could be. You know, we're very optimistic about the House. I'm optimistic that we're going to keep the majority, and I think we may well expand it before the night is over. The Senate, I'm not really sure. I'm not really working on the Senate. I know I live in one of the target Senate, one of the hottest contested Senate races in the state, where I voted for Senator McDonald against Kleinfeld today, and I think that race is going to be one that's going to help decide it, as well as the Pam Hornberger and Hertel race on the east side of the county. Macomb County is at the center of everything this year. We have 4 seriously contested state house races. We of course have John James, and we have 3 really hotly contested state Senate races.
Last thing would be, I guess, real quick, if Tudor Dixon is able to win the governor's seat, where does that rank in terms of upsets in Michigan political history, in your view?
You know, I started my first election cycle. I worked was 1990. I worked for the Michigan Republican Party, and November 6, 1990 is a day I'll never forget. 2 days beforehand, John Engler, the headline of the Detroit News was Blanchard well ahead, 54-40. And 2 days later, we were celebrating a 17,500 vote win for John Engler, who served 12 great years as the best governor in the history of our state. I think we may be looking at something similar tonight.
Real quick question all have time for is a yes or no. If Governor Whitmer wins and wins big in this state and carries the legislature in with her, does she break her promise of saying she'll stay here for 4 years and not run for president?
I don't even want to think about that, Chuck. I don't think that's going to happen.
Jamie, thank you.
All right.
Jamie Rowe joining us on our election
Thank you,
special.
guys.
We appreciate your time very much. Enjoy the rest of this evening as the votes are counted.
Thank you, Jamie.
Now, from 7 Action News, this is an election update.
Hello, polls in Michigan have closed, and we are starting to get some early results in. Let's start with the race for governor right now. We do have Gretchen Whitmer, the incumbent, that's up 54%, to the challenger, Tudor Dixon, at 44%, but just 2% of precincts reporting so far. Let's go to the Secretary of State race next, where we see Jocelyn Benson, Secretary of State Benson, up 56% over Christina Caramo at 41%. Once again, 1% of precincts reporting. And then as we head to the Attorney General race, we will see where AG Nessel, Dana Nessel, sits. She is up 54%, up 10% against Matthew DePerno at 44% at the moment. Still very early in the evening. Let's check on the initiatives. Prop 1, Prop 2, and Prop 3. Here's Prop 1, term limits in finance. Right now, a 70% yes for Prop 1. And as we take a look at Prop 2, we will see a yes vote as well, 63% for voting policies. And then last, Prop 3. And Prop 3 right now sits at 59% yes for reproductive freedom. Once again, very early in the evening. Now, all of this tallying is happening right now at Huntington Place in downtown Detroit. On top of everyone who voted today, clerks across the state are also counting the 1.7 million returned absentee ballots. There's a lot at stake in this election. After the 2020 census, Michigan lost a congressional seat, leaving the state with 13 districts.
This has been an election update from 7 Action News. Stay with 7 Action News and WXYZ.com for all your election coverage.
And we are back as we continue our special election coverage in this midterm 2022 election. Chuck, another guest with us.
Absolutely. Jonathan Hansen, he is with the University of Michigan Wolverines. How's the football season coming so far?
Absolutely great. You know that.
That's the easiest question you'll get all night. How are you viewing this midterm election? What are you concentrating on the most?
Well, as you know, all midterms are interesting. You know, usually they go against the party in power. In Michigan, though, there's a little bit of a slightly different feel, and I think that's in part due to the Reproductive Freedom Amendment on the ballot. It's bringing more people out to vote than might usually turn out in a midterm. And so it's really going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. All our standard predictions would say this would be a very Republican year, yet there's reason to wonder whether that's going to happen here in Michigan.
What do you think the chances are that Michigan could end up back in a Republican trifecta, which happened for 14 years in this state? Democrats haven't had control of the House since, what, 84, I think, and control of the Senate since, I think, around 2010.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine with that. I think given the polls, it suggests that all Republicans winning all three, you know, the governors, the Senate, and the House might be, you know, kind of lucky, but you never know for sure, and I think there is a possibility depending on how comes out today.
We've talked about Proposal 3 a fair amount, a little bit about Proposal 2, but
Yeah.
as you look at that and the changes that it would make in terms of voting access, voting opportunities, is that good for Michigan if that passes?
You know, I think it will be good for Michigan because we want people to vote. And I think that this proposal is really a response to what we've been seeing in recent years, especially the 2020 election. We've seen efforts at various places to try to make it more difficult to vote by taking away, you know, early voting, or by the way the votes were being counted, the canvassing boards. And you can look at the direct provisions of this proposal and see direct responses to what's happened in other states.
And what about Proposal 1? Two things at issue in this statewide ballot proposal, which could go into the Michigan Constitution. Number one is obviously the fact that it could change term limits, which was very popular with the general electorate. So that's a key part of this whole thing.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting—
And the financial disclosure.
And, you know, for me, that's maybe the bigger of the two components of that, is to bring in financial disclosure laws and, or, you know, provisions into place.
Aren't we one of the few states that doesn't require financial disclosures for some of those elected positions?
I think, you know, when it comes to transparency, Michigan clearly could do better, and this is one area where some improvement to be had. You know, at the federal level, candidates for Congress or members of Congress have to disclose their finances. The president also does as well.
Well, most of the time.
Not always with the taxes, as we know. But you know, this is important for the public to have some transparency, to know that when people are voting, do the members of the legislature or the governor have a financial stake in what's being voted on? And if they're receiving gifts from lobbyists, that should be reported. And I think Michigan voters have a right to know that.
But what does it say, and should that be done by the people, or should it be the legislators to be able to own up and say, we need to have more disclosure, and that's our responsibility to be able to change that law, not necessarily the people? Or does it reflect the fact that legislators are too afraid to do it?
Well, ideally, yes. The legislature would take it upon itself to vote and establish new disclosure laws. I think the reason that we're seeing it in the form of a constitutional amendment is that that kind of action hasn't happened.
Right.
And, you know, we've, at various levels, including in the 2020 election or 2016 election, where candidate Trump didn't release his tax returns, and I think it kind of set in motion a sort of belief that it was okay to not have to disclose these things. And I think the people, a lot of people anyway, are saying, no, I think we have a right to know some of these things.
Jonathan, we have some election deniers all across, running in races all across the country. We have some here in Michigan as well, in the Republican Party, AG and others. If these races wind up being very close, does that come as a surprise, to you at all, that we'd have individuals who have clearly said they thought the elections were stolen, or that there were irregularities that have not been proven, that those individuals might still get the nod from voters in this state?
I do find that a bit of a surprise, and I'm trying to take it in a longer term perspective, more of a historical context. And I think we're in some unprecedented territory with where we've got to the point where candidates are vocally saying, and I'm not necessarily talking about Michigan candidates, but in the United States, candidates are saying, well, I'll trust the results of the election if I win.
Yeah.
And that just can't be where we are as a democracy. I mean, we vote, and the vote needs to be respected. And we've had ample investigations.
Right.
And we need our candidates to take a lead and start reaffirming faith in our political system and not tearing it down.
Well said.
Yeah. Good point. And that's going to be basically on the ballot, is democracy,
and it will be on the ballot potentially in 2 years from now again as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It will.
Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Jonathan Hansen from the University of Michigan joining us tonight as we go through, wait for the votes to continue to come in. Meantime, our Glenda Lewis is live at Huntington Place, where the Detroit vote is being counted. Glenda, we'll check back in with you now.
All right, Dave, Chuck, good evening. Votes are still being counted. What's interesting is when you look across the room, and if you can see the red flag waving, we've had questions about the process and that red flag being, oh, I have a question. But that's just a sign of how, cooperative and peaceful this process is moving. It's even quieted down. You can tell this is the evening counting crew because the fervor has died down. And it's just now about getting it done and getting it done accurately and right. And the good part about the lead up to this election day, Dave, is you have been out there talking to different kinds of voters. Chuck, I know you do all the time. We did. We had the opportunity to hear from various perspectives, first-time voters, career voters, and there are a lot of different factors that are pulling people to the polls. I spent quite a significant amount of time with young voters who, are very interested in their rights and wanting their voices to be heard and all of the things that matter in their world. So we're hoping that transforms into an absentee, into a trip to a precinct to make their voice heard. We're seeing these numbers come in, some of them maybe a little off from earlier. We're being told we may be 10,000 off or so we just still have to wait until it all hashes out. But so far, peaceful process, still looking at Detroit police over my shoulder, still seeing the private security representation that is watching intently to make sure this is democratic and fair and just. Gentlemen, back to you.
Glenda, thank you. And meantime, those behind you busily working at making sure the vote is counted.
No doubt about it, but it's nice to see that there's such organization going on there.
Again, learning from the last experience and making improvements all the way around.
And the eyes of the nation were on us last time around, so we don't want to repeat that.
Yeah. Livonia Perriman is back with us.
My pleasure.
And Sharon Banks is here as well.
Good evening.
Thank you for joining us as well. So one of the things I think we wanted to get into tonight was voter turnout in Detroit. I think we're still waiting to get a real good idea of where that is maybe. But what were your hopes, Sharon, going in, given your long experience in Wayne County?
So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'd like to say I was exuberantly enthusiastic, and I hope the numbers prove to be what we know that they must be for us to be recognized, frankly, as a source and a force in the political and democracy of where we are. So I'm waiting anxiously like everyone else, but you know, Detroit has a history when you turn up and turn out, but we must be consistent, and there are many opportunities for us to participate in the election process, and our children, our grandchildren, and the history from whence we've come indicates that we have everything that we need, the steel in our backs, to stand up, be counted, and take our souls to the polls, if you will. And there are a lot of polls that are always being shared, but the true polls is when people get out to vote, absentee, in person, and we know that our legacy indicates that that's from whence we've come, so we have every opportunity.
Sure. Livonia Perriman, let me ask you a question. This was a historic race at the top of the ticket. First time 2 women in this state have run for governor against each other. Both of them ran with lieutenant governor candidates, Garland Gilchrist as African American, Hernandez, who has Latino Hispanic descent. So there's a lot of history going on here. Was this enough excitement to bring people out to the polls, and particularly African American women who have a history of voting strong and getting the vote out? More so, I would say, than African American men sometimes, and especially in raising money.
Well, number one, it was an interesting kickoff because I would think that it was a duplication of what we already had in terms of the governor and Garland Gilchrist, and that the other side, Republicans, they decided that they needed to duplicate, or at least give us an idea that the
from
image,
a large growing voting bloc,
absolutely,
Hispanics, Latino.
Right, and they understood that very clearly. One thing I have to say, they understood that, and they put together a team that they thought could beat the one that was already in office, being the governor, a white woman, and an African American male. And it's not by mistake. None of this is it's all by design on both sides, all by design. So the design, who will win tonight? It will depend on African American women throughout the state. Based on all the statistics and the polls, we can debate polls later, but all the polls are saying that African American women will drive, especially in Wayne County, will drive the vote, and they will make the difference. Will Garland Gilchrist and the governor make the difference over Tudor, Dixon? Some folks in the polls are saying, yes, they will, that African American women, based on the University of Michigan survey, said that African American women are excited about Proposal 3, and they're also excited about the possibility of making sure that their vote is protected, and that is what the governor has been expounding, that if she Proposal 2, that she would protect the vote. And the Attorney General, if I may say, also has been on the road saying that she too, as the Attorney General, if she's reelected, she will protect the vote. That's what African American women were interested in knowing about, and that was the message on the Democratic side. With that message, it is likely that African American women will show up and show out.
In Detroit, there are no African American congressional candidates in the city on the ballot this year. 13th, or in really in the reconfigured, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the 13th
no John Conyers, no Brenda Lawrence.
Is that something that is disappointing?
It is terribly disappointing.
In terms of representation,
in terms of representation, and in terms of inclusion of African American women in the process, to strategize on what should be done, what should have been done to galvanize around the opportunities and the options that we had in terms of those that were running. There was, I think, a misstep when there were not more women at the forefront of the planning, the strategizing, and understanding what is a winning ticket, what does it look like, and so that we all are able to contribute to the conversation and be at the table so that we can weigh in and weigh in effectively on how we can contribute to what the outcome should look like.
Sure. Livonia Perriman, we saw a lot of commercials dealing with the Michigan Supreme Court race. But I think if there's a race that people really don't maybe understand or pay that close of attention to when it gets right down to it in terms of the individual candidates and their backgrounds, that might be the race. How important is this Michigan Supreme Court race? 5 candidates for 2 seats, which they say is nonpartisan, even though they are nominated by the major political parties and the minor parties.
I've always said that judges have an impact on our lives from birth to death and everything in between. Why? Even if we just look at a parking ticket, that's just one, that's on the light side. But if we look on the side in terms of really Proposal 3, judges, Supreme Court judges, state Supreme Court judges have a play in the role, the language, how to protect our vote. Judges are important from the day we're born in terms of what we do, how we do it, and how we're protected. And if you have gone on the wrong side of justice, you know how important a judge and a decision could be. If you are female today, as we talk about Proposal 3, we know how important it is to have someone who has integrity and who understands the law, and the language of the law, the true language of the law. It impacts. And then if you are African American here in the state of Michigan or in the country, we have seen what could go wrong if we don't have the right justices sitting there with integrity, or what could go right. So from day one, in terms of our birth, that's how important they are to us.
And we saw the role that the courts play in the electoral process in the last presidential election, and it might happen again this time around, they make the ultimate decision on what happens at the voter box when we run into a controversy or a tie or a very close vote.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Livonia, thank you so very much. Sharon Banks, thank you so much for being here and being part of the discussion tonight as the vote is counted. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure.
Simon Shaked is at the GOP watch party in Novi. We'll turn to you, Simon, for an update now.
Dave, a couple hundred supporters out here at the Suburban Showplace in Novi as we give you a glimpse of what it looks like here. You see they've got the balloons up, they've got the music going, people are having their dinner, and they're here to support their candidates of 2 very important races in our state. Let's talk about those 2. First, for Michigan Attorney General. Now, we did see candidate Matthew DePerno arrive here just a short while ago. He shook hands with some of his supporters, and then he went back with his team. We have not yet seen the candidate for Secretary of State in Michigan, Christina Caramo, who's also expected to be here with us at some point in this evening, and both of them have really made a point to talk about their campaign being about election integrity and election security. And we've been having a chance to talk with some of the supporters out here about how this night is going. I want to bring in Ken Licari, who's with the Michigan GOP and also a supporter that helped organize the event. Ken, as you look around this room, what are the thoughts you have as to how the night's going so far, and also any chance you've had to communicate directly with the candidates?
Oh my gosh, there's so much excitement right now going on in this room. You could just feel the energy. You know, I'm looking at the numbers, and I know they're just new. They're real raw numbers early in reporting, and Matt's definitely ahead by a couple points. So we're really excited about that. Talking to some of the other candidates, you know, running for U of M Regent, running for Michigan State trustees, you can just feel their energy just talking to them. So we're real excited. Matt's real excited. I spent some time with Matt earlier when he first came in. Our staff, our team, we're real excited right now. Thank you.
I know you've worked hard, as many have, to generate a strong voter turnout. Can you talk about some of the efforts behind the scenes to just drum up people to get them out to the polls?
So I think, you know, if you need a reason to get out to the polls, then I think that we're second guessing ourselves. So to answer your question, what do? We pound the phones every day. encouraging people to get out and vote. We pounded doors. I'm from Macomb County, and I know we've got an amazing staff with our chairman, Eric Castiglia, Macomb County, or the Republican Party of Macomb County. He just worked his tail off along with our team to get people out door to door, just encouraging them to get out and vote. And I think this is going to be very key in this election.
We know that candidate for Congress, John James, who's running out of Macomb County, actually he has his own event this evening. However, he might stop in here is what we've been hearing, depending on how the night goes and how late the night goes.
Yeah, John James, we're real excited. I'm not too far from his district, and so we're real excited for John James. Right now I know he's up about 11 points. Yeah, he's supposed to be stopping by tonight. We're excited. We're excited that John James is going to take over that district, be our next congressman there in the 10th district. But we're also excited about Lisa McClain moving over in the 9th district too. She's solidifying her name and her brand in Michigan, so we're real excited about Lisa McClain too.
Thank you for your time, and
Yeah,
we'll be checking in with you
so
throughout
much.
the evening.
Appreciate that.
your time. And once again, 350 people bought tickets to this event. This is really a chance for everyone to come together that's a part of the Michigan GOP here in Metro Detroit. They all gathered here in Novi to throw their support behind the top candidates, and we'll of course be updating you throughout the night as we learn more. Dave, back to you.
Simon, thank you for the update there. Democrats gathering in Detroit, Motor City Casino. Our Sarah Grimmer is with Senator Debbie Stabenow.
We're here at the soundboard in Detroit right now, and we have the privilege of having Senator Debbie Stabenow with us. How are you feeling this evening?
I'm feeling great about Michigan. I really am. I'm hearing that there are long lines at Michigan State University and the University of Michigan where young people are coming out, that we are really looking at possibly the highest voter turnout for a mid-term election, a non-presidential election. So we had a high turnout in 2018, and if we could surpass that, it would be amazing.
I wanted to talk to you about the Democratic ticket tonight. So you were the first woman from Michigan elected into the Senate. We're here tonight, and we're going to see Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. We're going to see Attorney General Dana Nessel, Governor Gretchen Whitmer. How do you feel as a woman who helped pave the way for females in Michigan politics, seeing that?
You know, I'm so excited. It's so gratifying for me. When I was first getting involved, there weren't very many women to look to as role models, and so to be able to support them, to be able to open doors, it's never enough to just lift yourself up if you don't lift others up with you. So it's very exciting to see. We have terrific leadership in this state, and we have terrific leadership coming from women in this state.
And we look at that Democratic Party ticket tonight.
Right.
What is at stake when we look at those leaders who may be elected?
I think in Michigan, it's clearly, are we going to move forward or go backward? I mean, so many different things. On the economy, we have a renaissance in manufacturing going on right now, led by our governor and the team working with us, working with President Biden. We're bringing jobs home to Michigan, which is very exciting. We want to keep that going. We also want to move forward for women to make sure we can make our own reproductive health decisions and not somehow send that back to a bunch of politicians in a back room somewhere. We want to make sure our freedoms, our democracy is strong, that we're moving forward on the economy and our schools and children. And I want to make sure we're tackling the climate crisis, because the Great Lakes are now warming faster than the oceans. This is an alarm bell for us. So we need leaders that embrace science and want to move us forward.
Senator, thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's great to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. We will be out here tonight. We are expecting to hear from Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, Attorney General Dana Nessel, and of course the governor will be here as well. We'll keep you updated throughout the night as the numbers come in and we hear from some of our leaders. Reporting in Detroit, Sarah Grimmer, 7 Action News.
Sarah, thank you for bringing that to us. Yes, and it's a question of how long will we be here? How long before we know official results? Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says they expect to have all the votes counted within 24 hours. So that'd be a great thing.
Yeah, and you know, it's great reports. And I think the question that Sarah asked about women is so vitally important when you think about the number of women representing key positions in this state now compared to days when we remember they're just guys. Yep.
Now, from 7 Action News, this is an election update.
Good evening to you again. Early results just into our newsroom.
The AP is projecting Democrat Haley Stevens to win re-election to the U.S. House for District 11.
With 11% of precincts reporting Stevens with a 63% to 37% lead against the Republican challenger Mark Ambrose. This is a new district for Haley Stevens after the redistricting. And here are some numbers in the governor's race now, 4% reporting.
Yes, indeed. You see there Gretchen Whitmer with 52% of the vote, Tudor Dixon with 46%. Still early, though, so we're still watching that, of course. Now, let's check in with 7 Action News reporter Kim Russo.
She is covering Governor Whitmer's campaign for us tonight in downtown Detroit. Kim?
Yes, it's a big party here at the Soundboard at the Motor City Casino. Supporters of Governor Whitmer are gathering. There's music, there's dancing, there's drinking, there's eating, there's cheering whenever a headline comes across the news about some results coming in that benefit a Democrat. We are expecting to hear from Governor Gretchen Whitmer later on tonight, as well as other Democratic leaders such as Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson and Attorney General Dana Nessel. We will bring it to you live and have coverage as the night goes on as we see how people react to the results that are sure to be coming in. Reporting live in Detroit, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
A lot of people watching it very closely. Of course, that is the big race in Michigan. Thank you, Kim. We'll check back with you real soon.
And turning now to the challenger, Tudor Dixon, 7 Action News reporter Brett Cass is in Grand Rapids at the GOP watch party tonight. Brett?
Yeah, Dave, we're here inside the JW Marriott in downtown Grand Rapids with the Tudor Dixon campaign. As you said, there is a lot of excitement here tonight. They just showed Ron DeSantis giving his victory speech down in Florida. They've been cheering at some of the other races, seeing a lead for Tom Barrett over Alyssa Slotkin. So they're cheering on some other races. But again, as you read those results earlier, it's still a little too close to call in this governor's race. But we have talked to many folks here today supporting Tudor Dixon, and they feel really optimistic about her chances here. They have felt this momentum kind of building for a few weeks, and we've talked to some voters at campaign rallies in the past few weeks, and they feel optimistic as well. They think that this race might end up being a lot closer than some folks anticipate. Now, you talked about how long these results might take to come in. We know there's a lot of absentee ballots to count as well, and from talking to some voters here, some people, supporters of Tudor Dixon, they are anticipating a late night. We know from talking to the campaign, Tudor Dixon is here, but will not come out until they have a better idea of what those results might be. So whether she's out here at 10, 11, or maybe even later than that, we'll have to see. But again, we'll be here in Grand Rapids to find out the latest and hear from Tudor Dixon. Dave, Carolyn?
You got that right, Brett. Some people are anticipating maybe 24 hours before some races are called. Now, the race for governor is not the only big decision Michigan voters are making tonight.
Let's take a look at some of the other big races and the numbers as we have them so far. 4% of the vote counted. Dana Nessel, the incumbent attorney general, leading the challenger, Matt DePerno, 51% to 47%.
All right, now let's flip to Secretary of State. There you have it, 4% of the precincts reporting as well. Jocelyn Benson with 54% of the vote. Christina Caramo, 44% right now at least.
Let's take a look at the proposals. Proposal 1, which is the term limits and financial disclosure rules, 68% to 32% in favor with 3% reporting.
Let's take a look at Prop 2 right now, of course. This is about the voting policies, a very important proposition that everyone's looking at. 60% with yes votes right now, 40% with no votes. That's only 3% of precincts reporting, though.
And then Prop 3, the reproductive freedom issue on the ballot. Yes, 57 to 43% no. Again, just 3% of the precincts reporting so far.
Yes, indeed. We will certainly keep our eye on all of these races for you throughout the night.
This has been an election update from 7 Action News. Stay with 7 Action News and WXYZ.com for all your election coverage.